Turks Democratic National Convention coverage. Cenk, Uygur, Michael Shure with you guys. Epic and this dude. So we got a big night tonight. Very star-studded. Yes, finally Hillary Clinton. But in all seriousness, anyway, yes, Hillary Clinton, Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama. The Rock is here tonight. Kind of. He's actually not here. He's not anywhere. We're not there. No one's anywhere. We will be seeing from all of them. We'll go in a minute to see how things are going. Is it true that tyt.com/go makes this show happen? Yes, it is true. If you can donate there, does that help massively? Does it allow for this coverage? Yes. Okay, tyt.com/go. I think that was clear. All right, Michael. Let me ask you something I've been meaning to ask for 3 nights now. So obviously most of it is taped, like Michelle Obama's was, as Donald Trump famously pointed out. It's Kamala Harris. Let's go to Kamala Harris. We'll come back.
So each of us needs a plan, a voting plan. Joe and I want to make sure you're prepared. If you text VOTE to 30330, we'll help you come up with your plan and remember deadlines and get ready to vote in your community. So send that text and encourage your family and friends to send one too. Now let's enjoy another night of inspiration from around our country. I'll see you a little later tonight, and until then, I turn it over to my dear friend and tonight's moderator, Harry Washington.
Welcome to night 3 of the Democratic National Convention. I'm honored to be joining you as we continue to celebrate this unconventional convention. We're going to be hearing a lot more from Senator Harris later, I promise. But first, when I was in
okay, so we can skip the host, who's usually a wonderful actress who we respect, but is just doing moderator duties. Okay, so Jill Biden's appeared to be live, right? Down to the director going, Q, you're up, which we heard. And Joe Biden popping out of the woods as he has a couple of times. So is Joe Biden guaranteed to be live? Is Kamala Harris guaranteed to be live? Do we know if Barack Obama's live?
I don't know the answer to any of those. I would imagine that Joe Biden will be live, and I would imagine that Barack Obama will be taped, and I will imagine that Kamala Harris will be live.
That fight is real.
Okay.
So those are all guesses, and I don't know, and they haven't talked about it quite yet, and if they have, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, every once in a while Trump brags about how he does things live or without a prompter, which is true. He's actually a rare politician who goes prompterless often. Most politicians are on prompter most of the time. And I don't know that that's a bragging point for him.
I don't, and to be fair, I mean, I've covered him a lot. When he goes off prompter, he's saying the same thing each time for the most part. So it's not like he's talking about policy off of prompter. It's not like he's talking about, plans and advocacy off prompter. What he's talking about is usually the digs. He's usually talking about how great his record is and what they're going to do, even though they're not going to do any of those things. So it's a little different than somebody giving a speech that is full of policy and going off of prompter.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Like, so if you're getting to the intricacies of our foreign policy with the United Arab Emirates, you might want to be on prompter. Right. But the prompter or not, Donald Trump has no prayer of knowing any of the intricacies of any policy. Instead, what you're going to get from him is the post office is not getting very good reviews. The ratings are way down. Yeah, you could probably keep that in your head. Partly because it doesn't make any sense. It's just word salad.
Well, that's the thing. If you think about what he says and how much of it is just sort of off the cuff and just ridiculous improv, then it makes sense that that's what you're getting from him. So that it's off prompter, because whoever would be responsible for putting it on prompter probably wouldn't want to do that anyway.
Yeah, and look, guys, though, I don't want to just say, haha, easy to bash Trump over it. But you have to keep in mind, though, that did ring authentic to a lot of people. So they think they can trust Trump. They think he's honest, which sounds like the most ironic thing in the world, and it is the most ironic thing in the world. But they feel that way because they get this gut sense that he's not BSing them. The reason they're getting that gut sense is because he's off prompter and he doesn't.
Yeah, I don't. We all. Can you hear me, Asher? Because I lost Cenk. But if you can hear me until we get Cenk back, the whole notion of being off prompter, and that is part of his selling point, right? To those people, that I am not the same old canned politician that you all have been so accustomed to seeing for all this time. I'm the guy who's just going to say, no, I'm telling it like it is. I'm telling you though what you want to hear, even if it's not exactly true. But it worked for him. He's the president, and Hillary Clinton, who's speaking tonight, is not. And I think that there's, that you have to give a little bit of credit in that score, because he was able to sell the snake oil and he got the White House. But when it does come to the important parts of a convention, of a campaign speech, it's Donald Trump who goes way off of the prompter because he can, and that's his selling point. Do we have Cenk back yet, or no? We don't. Okay, so
long before this pandemic, our country has been suffering from the epidemic of gun violence.
Gun violence is a public health crisis, one that disproportionately affects the Black and brown communities. Fiance.
High school went into lockdown because a kid brought a gun to school.
We've had to endure live shooter training drills on our schools.
High schoolers have enough to deal with. They shouldn't also be responsible.
There's no way to quantify it, but clearly the Democrats putting Barack Obama in prime time on the third night after his Secretary of State and the last standard bearer for the party, Hillary Clinton, speaks. It's going to be a convention that she comes back to and will likely be talking about how they underestimated Donald Trump last time. They didn't do all the things they needed to do, and as we didn't know now what we knew then, or we didn't know then what we know now about him. I would imagine she would push that kind of an attitude onto the convention floor that doesn't exist. But I do think that with these two people from the same administration sort of straddling someone who is newer, and that's Kamala Harris, who's going to be making her first pitch to the party as a whole. She was a candidate for the presidency. She dropped out in December. Probably the best move she could have made, right? Because any negativity that she brought to the conversation at that point was negativity that the conversation didn't want to have going forward when she was going after Joe Biden, who it looked like was doing very well. She wasn't able to raise the kind of money that she had hoped with such a big field. But now she gets to speak to the party. Now she gets to see if she can talk about some of the progressive ideas that the president has, some that she adopted, and some that she disagrees with Joe Biden. I say the president. Nominee. So are we going to the convention now, Asher? Or we'll just keep going. We'll try and get Cenk back here at some point. Okay, so that's what we're looking for with Kamala Harris. So again, she's somebody who has not appealed to the progressive. She's a former prosecutor, but she has been on, whether she got there for political reasons or not, she's been on the side of some issues that Joe Biden has not been on the side. And we look at Medicare for All as one of them, and how she got there and how she talks about it. But when you are the vice president, you have a boss. And when you are the vice presidential nominee, you not only have a boss, but everybody who is handling you from the Biden campaign, not from the Biden-Harris campaign. That's just on paper. So she's going to have to toe the line of whatever the campaign is telling her to toe the line on. And when she varies from it, everyone in the press, everybody watching is going to point it out. So it has to be a unified message, but she's also going to try and appeal not just to the gimme votes, right? The ones that you think you're going to get with Kamala Harris, which are maybe younger voters, maybe progressives, maybe African-American voters, maybe women. There are a lot of that's there, but she's going to try and appeal to voters who may be reluctant to vote for somebody who's an older president. This is her campaign in 2020, her campaign in 2024. And she is the featured speaker just by virtue of the fact, not because Barack Obama isn't or everybody isn't curious about how Hillary Clinton will be received at this convention that doesn't receive anybody, but it is a little bit about whether or not Kamala Harris, how she steps into the limelight. And speaking of stepping into the limelight, look who's back.
Okay, so the thing about modern technology is that once something goes wrong, you can't fix it because it's definitely going to make it worse. So I had slight internet issues and I made the terrible mistake of trying to fix it. And I'm not trying to do it on my own. Just get a guy out here from Spectrum, obviously makes it way worse. And then when now we had another person come out today, they mean well, God bless their hearts, right? And now it doesn't work at all, oftentimes. So, and that happens every time somebody will tell you, oh, that's really easy. Don't worry about it. It's really easy. And every American knows 8 out of 10 times it's going to make it worse. You know it. I know it.
The notion of upgrade has really taken on a new meaning with the internet too. When you go to Spectrum or you go to whoever your carrier is, not just Spectrum, they say they're going to give you an upgrade. That upgrade never does what it's supposed to, and it makes it sometimes impossible to get online in your own home. And I lived it.
It's like that old joke they had in the 80s. I don't know if Reagan said it or not, but I think Reagan said it in one of his famous speeches. I'm here, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you, is the biggest lie there is. Right. Which it turns out is, of course, ironically, that was the lie. But
may have been his actual nominating acceptance speech. I mean, that's where he may have said that, though I don't. Yeah. It's a famous.
Let's go to Gabby Giffords here, and then we'll come back and talk more about my cable.
Former Congresswoman.
I responded with grit and determination. I put one foot in front of the other. I found one word and then I found another. My recovery is a daily fight, but fighting makes me stronger. Words once came easily, today I struggle to speak. But I have not lost my voice. America needs all of us to speak out, even when you have to fight to find the words. We are at a crossroads. We can let the shooting continue, or we can act. We can protect our families, our future. We can vote. We can be on the right side of history. We must elect Joe Biden. He was there for me. He'll be there for you too. Join us in this fight. Vote, vote, vote. Thank you very much.
Tonight, we're going to hear from many changemakers who are using their powers.
So that was Gabby Giffords. She was literally shot in the head, and that was a United States congressperson. And that obviously led to tremendous gun control to regain sanity in this country. Oh no, right, it didn't lead to any gun control, nor did the massacre of dozens of children in Connecticut or Florida, and or the worst massacre in modern American history in Vegas. None of it mattered. None of it changed anything. That was look. It's inspiring to see her, but also I found one word and then another. But I haven't lost my voice. That was great. So whoever wrote that, if it was her or anyone else, great job on that. And now Mark Kelly is her husband, running for the Senate seat in Arizona against Martha McSally, and he's doing great. And the Republicans are in a lot of trouble there. So Michael, just quickly dipping into this topic, I I haven't tracked it meticulously, but if you force me to bet right now, and boy, you'd really have to twist my arm, I would bet that the Democrats retake the Senate. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty safe bet at this point. When you look at the races that are supposed to be the ones that flip the Senate, I mean, you look at 4 possible pickups from Maine, Susan Collins going down, to Arizona, as we just talked about, Martha McSally going down, Cory Gardner in Colorado. I think Tom Tillis is a loser in North Carolina. The Democrats will probably give one back in Doug Jones in Alabama. It's just too hard for a Democrat to win there, and that would be an impressive, unheard of thing if he was able to do it. But then you go the next layer, Cenk. You look at a state like Iowa, where Teresa Greenfield is challenging Joni Ernst. If this election keeps going the way it's going, when you had a tone-deaf response to this derecho in Iowa, this terrible storm that went through Iowa, and you have the administration doing nothing, the Senate not responding, and you have Teresa Greenfield running what I think is a good campaign there. Then to South Carolina, Jamie Harrison running neck and neck. Cook Political Report moved that from likely Republican to leans Republican, which doesn't seem like a big move, but it's a huge move when that senator is Lindsey Graham. Go to Alaska, Al Gross is running against Dan Sullivan, someone you've likely never heard of. But Al Gross is somebody who is now making strides, and all the Republicans are there. Don Young, who's the dean of the House now, he's been in the House since 1972. He's in trouble there. So these sorts of things lead me to think, now I don't think Mitch McConnell's going to lose. I don't think Mitch McConnell would have lost no matter who the candidate was there. I think John Cornyn's probably going to win in Texas, but keep an eye on that. But this really does, to me, point to the Democrats taking the Senate.
So look, guys, political bloodbath is on the board. So Cornyn could lose.
I'm prognosticating here, but I definitely could. He has a better chance in my mind of losing than does Mitch McConnell, but I wouldn't count on either of those.
Right. So, but it's like in previous elections, John Cornyn or pretty much any Republican losing in Texas was not on the board. It was not even imaginable. And now it is definitely on the board. So the spectrum has moved, and even in the
just interrupt. I didn't mention Georgia, right? I mean, there are 2 Senate races in Georgia. Both of those are in play. Republicans are spending money in Texas and Georgia in Senate races in 2020 with an incumbent president. That's unheard of. I mean, that's unbelievable. We may not know the Senate until January because of Georgia's rule. Their runoff election happens in January. So we may not know who controls the Senate, and that election, that runoff in January, if it happens, is going to be the most expensive political race in American history.
Yeah, if it's potentially a tie for the Senate. And so, all right, let's go to Michelle Lujan Grisham, and then we'll come back.
I'm proud of New Mexicans from Taos to Truth or Consequences who have stepped up and sacrificed in so many incredible ways this past half year. And I'm proud how we embrace our multicultural identity as our greatest strength. And I'm proud that New Mexico has shown what climate leadership looks like. While the Trump administration has been eliminating environmental protections, we've expanded them. While they've been rolling back regulations on oil and gas, we've taken on polluters and held them accountable. We've committed to a renewable energy future with exciting and fulfilling careers for workers all across our beautiful state, including right here in the heart of northern New Mexico. We're laying a roadmap here for what America can and should look like in the 21st century. An America where we lead again, where we build safer, cleaner, and more affordable cities and communities, where we provide meaningful opportunities for workers and families to thrive and build better lives. As president, Joe Biden will rejoin the international climate agreement, and the United States will once again lead on this critical issue. At home, he'll invest in energy workers, and he will deliver for working families across the U.S., helping them build meaningful careers while accelerating our nation and world into a clean, green 21st century and well beyond. We know time is running out to save our planet. We have the chance this November to end 2 existential crises: the Trump presidency and the environmental annihilation he represents. We have the chance this November to attack the climate crisis, invest in green 21st century jobs, and embrace the clean energy revolution our country, our young people are crying out for, and the leadership the rest of the world is waiting for. The choice is clear. The choice is Joe Biden. Thank you, America.
Hard work.
So that was, remember, we're for the environment, they're not, and we're for minorities and they're not. Okay, good. I always want them to be more specific. Like, if I got a great stat about how many jobs they created in New Mexico while going to renewable energies, that's exciting, right? And that allows me to get excited and tell you guys, oh my God, look, you elect Democratic governors and you get X number of jobs, and give me some stat on something like emissions that we did better on. But it's not just Democrats, obviously. It's just in politics, they don't think that stuff works. And that's probably true for older voters. But for younger voters, I know for progressives, just tell us something real, for God's sake.
Here's something real from Lujan Grisham, and I'm sure she said it there. I'm sure it was said about her. New Mexico has a 3% positivity rate on COVID. She shut the state down. She had drive-through testing before anybody talked about drive-through testing in New Mexico. And you have to realize she's flanked by Texas and Arizona, and we know what a disaster those states have been on COVID. So Lujan Grisham is there not just because she's a Latina and she was the chairman of the Hispanic caucus when she was in the House. She's the first Hispanic elected governor. They're female governor. That's important stuff. But I think the COVID stuff is why Lujan Grisham has a bigger spot here at the convention than you might have expected from a New Mexico.
Michael, you have the answers to these. I might not like the answer, but why not say that? You've got a couple of minutes. It's a great case to make. What you said about her was infinitely better than what she said about herself. And make a forceful case for, we could have done this better with coronavirus. And look at me, I'm flanked by Texas and Arizona. I was gonna say, but we're killing it here. It's not the best way to put it in this context, and they're literally not. They're doing the opposite. But why not make that case? Why did they just go to generalities?
Here's the thing, Cenk. It's a convention. People talk in generalities at conventions. For the most part, you're rallying up the base. Yes, they're talking to America. America's watching, but they're talking to Democrats as well. The other thing is we came in the middle. I can't imagine, and I'm being forgiving here, I can't imagine that her response to COVID and the COVID response in New Mexico was not mentioned by her or by whoever introduced her. So I'd have to wait and see. Otherwise, I mean, you're 100,000% right, because there's no way that you put her up there without talking about that.
Yeah, so we'll check the transcript. We get the transcripts, and yes, so sometimes we come in a tiny bit late to these speeches as we rev up. But no, I wouldn't be at all surprised. I think you know what I think. I don't think Democrats are good at politics, and so anyway, speaking of which, why isn't Teresa Greenfield and other Jamie Harris and all these folks featured? Because okay, Lujan Grisham, great job, and actually she's a terrible example for me because I do want her featured. I do want that coronavirus story out there. I wish she put some numbers to the renewable energy stuff, et cetera. But you got to feature the people right now who need the name recognition. No one knows who Al Gross is.
Well, Jamie. Right, Jamie Harrison was in the convention. He actually introduced one of the nights, or.
Oh, you're right. He was on super briefly, but everybody's on super briefly. I didn't. There was an introduction. It wasn't his own speech, if I remember correctly.
Exactly. He gabbled in, or he did something like that. But first of all, these things are truncated because of the COVID thing that's going on, and all day long, people would be speaking. People would be milling around the hall and names, and I think we're being unfairly critical a little bit about who is speaking and who isn't speaking, though I think there's certainly names, and I agree with you, we should see some of these Senate candidates in prime time. It's important even if 5 of them come out there at once and they're all on a split screen. But these nights go like this even when we're not under the microscope of Zoom and virtual conventions. And people like Teresa Greenfield would have spoken at 4:14 in the afternoon when Democrats are on the floor looking at it, and then they move to the primetime schedule, which is always this way. So they've tried to stick to some of what's real, but in doing that, you lose a lot of the effect of what happens earlier in the day when the convention is normal.
Yep, I hear you. Real quick, while we have an opportunity, Cousin Vinny says these are all our members. tyt.com/join to become a member, and then you could also become a member on YouTube by hitting the join button underneath. Cousin Vinny says, Michael, well done handling that on the fly. Thanks for the good commentary for when my internet went out. By the way, tyt.com/go so I can afford internet. All right, anyway. Tuffy says, Michael Shure, awesome. Man, what a consummate professional. So lots of love out there for you, Michael.
And all my love to all of you people, to all of the ones who haven't yet criticized me on the stream. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go to the core of an issue here while we have a little bit of time. Joe Biden, you've been a fan for a long time, and he is probably, like, name a senator from our lifetimes, and I would have named either John McCain or Joe Biden, right? And they did that video yesterday where the ghost of John McCain came back to say how much he liked Joe Biden. And so make a case for Biden. Why are you excited about Biden?
I'm excited about Biden for a variety of reasons. I'm excited about Biden for the same reason that Biden's the nominee, that he's not Trump. So that's the beginning of my excitement for him. The other part of it, and I think excitement might be the wrong word. I don't think you get excited about the person who fulfills what I'm about to say. I do think he's a good person to usher us from this era, to make it an aberration, and then to move us to the next space and hand this thing off. I think that's the right job for Joe Biden right now. I think there's something, Gerald Ford became president upon Nixon's resignation. He wanted to win again, but looking back on history right now, he did a really good job of taking us from a nightmare and moving us to the next chapter. And whatever happened in that chapter, it started with Jimmy Carter and then it went to Ronald Reagan. But it did take us from one horrible place to another. And I think Joe Biden is in that mold. Joe Biden too is a people pleaser. He's somebody who wants to please whoever's there. And I think the criticism of him, and I think it's valid, of who he has cozied up to in his Senate career to be liked. And I think it's important. He's somebody who likes to be liked. I think it's important that you have that person now in the Democratic Party, because I think he wants to be liked by the progressives. I think he cares about that in almost a shallow way, but an important way. And I think that could be an important person to have as president right now, as not just the country, but the Democratic Party is trying to figure out how to transition themselves, and they're going to need to do that, or else they're going to be doomed. So I think that makes him an important person as well. I do buy into it's okay to reach across the aisle now and then, even if Democrats are the ones that are always reaching, because Republicans, I don't think, ever really reach. I don't think that ever happens. They flirt, but they don't reach. And so I think Biden is good for these things. They are superficial. I don't think the world is going to change in America because of Joe Biden, though there are reasons to be encouraged, because a people pleaser is going to try and please different factions in Congress. And if it's a Democratic Congress, that's going to be an easy thing for Joe Biden to do. He likes being liked. And I'll finish with this. The toughest thing for this primary for Joe Biden, which I think made him a much better general election candidate, is everyone for Joe Biden's career has always been nice to Joe Biden. They've always been nice to him. And then all of a sudden he gets into this ring with people as the front runner shooting him down. He didn't know what to expect. And I think it steeled him for a general election against someone who's going to be really cruel and really mean. And I think that makes him a better candidate too. But that speaks to what I'm talking about with Joe Biden. He likes being liked. And I think if he does things to please a lot of people, it could work for a short period of time.
Yeah, and so that then leads to the question of the transition that you alluded to. And I agree with you. The way that I put it is, Joe Biden has a tremendous amount of empathy, but it's only for the people in that room at that time. And so he has trouble thinking about it in a bigger landscape. So the part of the reason that he liked the Strom Thurmonds of the world is because he was in a room with them. And so he wound up having empathy for him. And in the opinion of a lot of people, that's the wrong guy to have empathy for. And so there's two things here that Biden is particularly good at. And I wish it was policy, but it's not. One is a person, we talked about this last night in the context of Jill Biden. They have a grieving family. We have a grieving country with all these deaths from coronavirus and all the tragedies that have befallen us. And so in a sense, you can't find a better person to comfort a grieving country than Joe Biden. So that you've got to give that to him, right?
Unquestionably, and that's what this country needs. I mean, that's one of his selling points. As you said, empathy is unquestionably one of his selling points.
And then that also relates to the second point I was going to make, which is that we've been brutalized for 4 years with a guy who's not borderline sociopath. I think he actually is a sociopath and has no empathy. So if you're looking for an antidote to a guy who has no empathy, again, Joe Biden is your guy. Now that's gonna, of course, get to the question of yes, but what is he going to do? And we talk about that all the time. And so we'll talk about that throughout the night. And then when I mentioned transition, I meant 2024. Right. Okay, if Biden is a placeholder, what is he a placeholder for? So hold on that thought.
And I'm going to hold on to it without agreeing that he's a placeholder, because a placeholder just sits there, and I think it'll be a little different than that. But yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Okay, so first I want to do call outs to folks who are joining right now on YouTube. So I love seeing your names. So Green Lodestar, Heather Boos, Dominic Micalizzi, Lisa Spielman, Daniel Muriel, thank you all for becoming members in the middle of this broadcast. Again, if you want to do it on YouTube, you just hit that join button below. Lowest level, it means you're supporting the show. We see your name, you get a TYT badge, so we know you're a member. And at the mid-level, you get the post game every night, including the one Michael and I are going to do at the end of this night and giving more analysis for you guys. And at the highest level, you get all of our videos, all of our shows, anytime you want. And speaking of which, Alan Lee just upgraded and Jason Chuck just upgraded, and you could upgrade on YouTube as well. And then I just want to read one comment here before we go back to the festivities and the comments. Occam's Taser says, I worked on a contract in New Mexico and everyone there wears masks without a single complaint. So I love it when you guys give us basically reports from the field. So those are our members on the website, tyt.com/join. We read their comments more often. And it's partly because they're great comments, both smart and relevant experience here. And so there's no question, based on the math and the numbers, New Mexico did it right. So Lujan Grisham deserves a tremendous amount of credit. She saved a lot of lives. We don't know how many lives, but she saved lives. But it wasn't just her, as our member here is pointing out. For everyone who wore a mask in New Mexico, thank you. And thank you for wearing it without complaint. Arizona and Texas, your neighbors, the cases exploded. They didn't do it, and it cost a lot of people their lives. And so, we look to New Zealand sometimes for what they did right, but we could also look to New Mexico. And it's great to have at least one example of competence still left in America.
Yeah. And maybe all countries and places that start with new Papua New Guinea. Have they done?
Yeah, quick, their capital.
Port Moresby.
We did this on Old School the other night. It is unreal that you know those capitals. It's unreal. All right, you know what? Let's see if we got this one. The senior senator in Nevada became a senator in what year?
The senior senator in Nevada is, let's see, became a senator in what year? 2000. I would say 2014, 2016.
2017.
Was it 7? Oh, well, became a senator.
Right.
So 2017. Yeah. Okay.
So you're right. It was to the 2016 election. So you got it right by the skin. You were going 24. I was like, no, and then you pulled it out.
See, 2017 was really, I mean, that was a technicality, Alex.
Now that's a technicality. No, you got it right. It was in the 2016 election. I just noticed that the other day, honestly, and I was like, it's funny because Harry Reid had that seat for approximately 280 years.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, boom, boom, both their senators are gone, and they got 2 new senators. You know what? I'm glad you guys brought this up. I like to check in on these random videos every once in a while. The so-called real people videos, that's for the cable news commercial breaks. But I like watching them. Let's dip in here.
And traveled for days to reach the border. And when they got to the river, she lifted my sister above the water and crossed.
We came to America before I was 1 year old. She saved my life.
No podía esperar. Tenía que venir en ese momento en busca de un milagro.
My mother had no choice. There was no time to wait to save my sister. She came here looking for a miracle.
Tenía miedo que nos encontraran, que nos detuvieran y nos regresaran, pero yo tenía que salvar a mi hija.
We were afraid they would find us and detain us, but she had to save her daughter.
Our home is here. North Carolina is all I know. I qualified for DACA, but Donald Trump took away my ability to apply for the program.
Trabajamos duro, salimos adelante, pagamos impuestos.
We work hard, we contribute to our community, and we pay our taxes. I've gone to school and built a good life for me and my 2 daughters.
I want to go to law school. I want to help my community. But ever since Donald Trump was elected, all our fears have returned.
We don't know if our family will be separated. Will my mom and sister be detained? Will my sister get the health care she needs and deserves?
I don't have the right ID, so I can't get health insurance through the exchange. I need health insurance. I deserve it, right?
Claro que sí, mija. Todos merecemos esperanza, buena vida y salud. Me rompe el corazón ver cómo separan a niños de sus familias en la frontera. Eso está mal. Esos bebés necesitan a sus padres.
It breaks our hearts to see children separated from their families at the border. That's wrong. Those children need their parents. On November 3rd, I'm going to vote for my mother, my sister, and my daughters. I will vote for a future where all of our lives have dignity.
So, I'm glad we dipped into that because this is a major difference between the parties. So we often criticize Democratic leadership on the Young Turks, and then what I call the Democratic establishment. But the Republican Party, the old Republican Party would have paid lip service to Latinos and would have had a couple of Latino businessmen who were probably Cuban tell you how much their taxes needed to be cut and how they were hated communism, right? But this current Republican Party doesn't want to see those women that you just saw. They don't, like, to them, they look at, oh, folks came from Latin America to here and they're disabled and they need help and they need healthcare. They look at that and they don't think, oh my God, that's a human being. Hey, look, they came to America for hope and opportunity. They look at that and go, no, I wish they hadn't come. So they're not gonna get featured in the RNC. That's just not gonna happen. And the DNC still cares about them. And you can say it's, because they want Latino votes, you can say it for whatever you want, but the bottom line is Democratic Party and the Republican Party now, even for the most establishment Democrats, is massively different on that issue. The Republicans have no mercy at all.
No question, and it's not just, I mean, I don't think it's at all just because they want Latino votes. First of all, because immigration is not even the top issue for most Latino voters that have been polled over the last 4 years. It's economy, it's the jobs, and it's education. So it isn't immigration, and so for that reason alone, I don't think it's that. But also, I mean, it goes to what you were just talking about with Vice President Biden, which is empathy, right? I mean, this is a party that is, even if all of their policies are not, and even if they can't get it together to pass a lot of their policies some of the time, they are the ones that pass the most empathic policies and bills, and they're the ones at least that can appeal to that. So I think it's important to note that distinction.
Okay, now we were on a lot of different platforms, and I love that we're on Twitch because it's fun in so many different ways. Yesterday we hit.
By the way,
what's that?
I do too. By the way,
one
of the great users.
So I mean, we cannot get Michael Shure to stop playing video games on Twitch. I mean, we just can't do it. But but it's super fun. Last night we hit level 5 on the hype train. I don't know what that is, but it sounds great. Like there's no way that past coronavirus, I don't want to be on a hype train. I definitely do. And I don't want to stop at level 4. I want to go all the way to level 5.
Is level 5, where do you go from level 5, Cenk?
No idea. Yeah. I'm hoping level 6, but I really don't
guess though. Yeah, there's a good guess.
So tonight, something sub with Prime, and they're a new subscriber. So something, thank you, and I love your name. And the great thing about Twitch is that you can subscribe using Amazon Prime, and it doesn't cost you anything, but we do get paid. That's perfect. So if you have Amazon Prime,
how does he spell his name?
SUMTIN, and then repeated 3 times. Something. Okay, not Fort something
or her. Yeah.
Okay. And FET713 also sub with Prime. So thank you guys. And this is such a Twitch thing. That's partly why I read this whole thing. Individualism Killed a Cat gifted a subscription to Zombie Fish. Because of course.
Right. That one.
Michael, if they told you, in the year 2020, you'll be covering the Democratic convention and talking about how individualism killed a cat had gifted a sub to Zombie Fish, right? You would say, well, obviously, right?
I'd say, Cenk, you've been smoking something.
There you go. Okay, so every night of the convention is different in that they are emphasizing different things and they're featuring different folks at different times. So on the first night, the first hour was relatively empty and the second hour was more star-studded. On the second night, they packed a lot of their top speakers in the beginning, then had a huge roll call in the middle, and apparently there was something about calamari in Rhode Island. I missed that part. And then we hit it, a lot of the big stars at the end. Although yesterday really wasn't that many folks. So tonight, apparently they've decided we're not gonna show anybody in the first hour because we're 41 minutes in. And these are not big name politicians. No disrespect to Gabby Giffords and Lujan Grisham and to this person rapping right now. But these are not the top stars of the Democratic Party. But they've got giant ones, Obama, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, well, no matter what you think of her, these are, and Elizabeth Warren, all coming up. So, by the way, since I missed it, Michael, what was the calamari thing with Rhode Island?
Sort of have to see it. The state senators talking about how they are and there's a controversy about it too, because they're the calamari capital and they serve their calamari is served in all 50 states. And there's a guy there standing next to him holding a tray of calamari. He's got the mask on. And it just was so great that he's, from, happy calamari or whatever he finished up with. But there was a whole thing with the clam diggers in Rhode Island. That bill that passed to make calamari the official dish of Rhode Island was, of course, because it's politics and in Rhode Island where it's really dirty. It was met with a lot of consternation because the clam people thought it should be the clam.
That's awesome. Okay, and I'm going to tell the most random story of all time. When one of my nephews was really young, not Hassan, speaking of Twitch, he got mad at us at some car trip that we were on. I forget if he was 6 or 7 or whatever he was, and he couldn't think of an insult in enough time, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to make all you eat calamari." We're like, okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Why are we going to Rhode Island?
Right, maybe your nephew is actually the guy with the mask holding the tray of calamari next to Senator McNamara.
Maybe. All right, so more of you guys. Jenny Thompson just joined, Michelle Freeman just joined, and Tim Abrams just joined on YouTube. So hit the join button below, and we love having you guys as part of our family. And then so one of our members here made a good comment that I wanted to address because it's substantive, it's about policy, and it's about what we discussed. So Madeline wrote in, let's be honest, plenty of people were deported and separated from their families, mine included. under the Obama-Biden administration, same under Trump administration, no difference. So we do nuance on this show. So the fact that Democrats, the optics of them caring about Latinos still matters, because do we live in a world where we want to support one another, or do we live in a world where we attack Latinos and tell others to attack them, as Donald Trump has done? One, on that alone, that does make a difference. Number two, when it comes to policy, you're absolutely right to point out how many the Obama-Biden administration deported. They did break a record. There was a technicality in there, but technicality notwithstanding, they deported a lot of people. It just did. And so, on the other hand, they did not have the child separation policy. So Trump, of course, lies about that. He's the one that created that. Now, when you get into the real nitty gritty of it, the Democrats are in favor of making the Dreamers legal. The Republicans are not. So that's a giant difference. That's a policy difference on this issue. On the other hand, the Democrats have not chosen to prioritize it. So if they had a moment in the Trump administration when Trump had shut down the budget, where I thought they had an excellent chance of being able to get the Dreamers protection, and they just didn't prioritize it in the shutdown. And so now, all these years later, they're still, twisting in the wind. So that is I think that issue, in a sense, is the perfect description of the Republican and Democratic Party, where the Democratic Party is definitely better, but also definitely not good enough.
Yeah, you're right, but there is something about taking steps backwards that makes it worse than not taking steps forward. And I think that Obama is guilty of the latter, and Trump is really guilty of the former. And I think, the hope would be that as these issues mature, and as DACA, as the Dreamers get older, it's going to be much more in the lexicon of Democratic politics as an urgent issue. But again, that's my optimism there more than it is anything else, that you'll see it develop. And again, this is exactly the kind of issue that maybe Joe Biden could take on. It's a simple issue. If he has one term, when I say a simple issue, it's complicated, but it's very simple. It's simple to bring down to being easily absorbed by people. It's a great political legacy, and he has a chance to do that.
So let's talk about what in sometimes business parlance is called minimum viable product. So what would I consider, and what would you consider a win for the Biden administration if they go 4 years? So are we going to get Medicare for all? Almost a 0% chance. Green New Deal, almost 0%. Biden is actively opposed to those. Pelosi and Schumer are actively opposed to them. You could give them super majorities and they still wouldn't do it. And I know you could say, hey, there'll be pressure, and we'll put maximum pressure on. I would just be shocked if we were good enough to push those recalcitrant leaders into those policies in the next 4 years. But I'd be shocked if they ended corruption in politics. I mean, preposterous. But that doesn't mean they can't do anything about corruption in politics. So then what is the minimum viable product? Well, $15 minimum wage, it's a layup. Federal background checks, layup. If you control all three branches. Protecting the Dreamers permanently, layup. And I could probably add a couple of those, but Michael, are we agreed that if they have all three branches, that's clearly layups?
Yeah, and a huge yes, those are all layups. I think absolutely. Back into the Paris Climate Accord. Oh, we have Hillary Clinton on now.
Let's go to Hillary Clinton.
Set up for him a strong economy, plans for managing crises, including a pandemic. Yes, we Democrats would have disagreed with him on many things, but if he had put his own interests and ego aside, seen the humanity in a child ripped from her parents at the border, or a protester calling for justice, or a family wiped out by natural disaster, that would have been a good thing for America and the world. I wish Donald Trump knew how to be a president, because America needs a president right now. Throughout this time of crisis, Americans keep going, checking on neighbors, showing up to jobs as first responders, hospitals, grocery stores, nursing homes. Yes, it still takes a village. And we need leaders equal to this moment of sacrifice and service. We need Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Everyone has a story about Joe's caring and empathy. I remember him calling after my mother, Dorothy, died, and we talked about being raised by strong women. The best testament to Joe is how he's cared for his family. And how great is it that Dr. Jill Biden plans to keep teaching as First Lady. And Joe picked the right partner in Kamala. She's relentless in the pursuit of justice and equity, and she's kind. When her press secretary, Tyrone Gale, was dying of cancer, she dropped everything to be with him in his final moments. I know something about the slings and arrows she'll face, and believe me, this former district attorney and attorney general can handle them all. So this is the team to pull our nation back from the brink, but they can't do it without us. For 4 years, people have told me, I didn't realize how dangerous he was. I wish I could do it all over, or worse, I should have voted. Look, this can't be another woulda, coulda, shoulda election. If you vote by mail, request your ballot now and send it back right away. If you vote in person, do it early. Become a poll worker. Most of all, no matter what, vote. As Michelle Obama and Bernie Sanders warned us, if Trump is reelected, things will get even worse. That's why we need unity now more than ever. Remember back in 2016 when Trump asked, what do you have to lose? Well, now we know. Our health care, our jobs, our loved ones, our leadership in the world, and even our post office. But let's set our sights higher than getting one man out of the White House. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to give us so much to vote for. Let's vote for the jobs that Joe's plan will create. Clean energy jobs to fight climate change, caregiving jobs with living wages. Vote for emergency relief that lifts small businesses and saves hardworking people from foreclosures and evictions. It's wrong that billionaires got $400 billion richer during the pandemic while millions lost their $600 a week in extra unemployment. Vote for the parents and teachers struggling to balance children's education and safety, and for healthcare workers fighting COVID-19 with little help from the White House. Vote for paid family leave and healthcare for everyone, for Social Security, Medicare, and Planned Parenthood. Vote for dreamers and their families. Vote for law enforcement purged of racial bias that keeps all our streets safe. Vote for justice for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, because Black lives matter. Vote for honest elections so we, not a foreign adversary, choose our president. Vote for the diverse, hopeful America we saw in last night's roll call. And don't forget, Joe and Kamala can win by 3 million votes and still lose. Take it from me. So we need numbers overwhelming so Trump can't sneak or steal his way to victory. Text VOTE 30330 to get started. 100 years ago yesterday, the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified. It took 7 decades of suffragists marching, picketing, and going to jail to push us closer to a more perfect union. 55 years ago, John Lewis marched and bled in Selma because that work was unfinished. Tonight, I'm thinking of the girls and boys who see themselves in America's future because of Kamala Harris, a Black woman, the daughter of Jamaican and Indian immigrants, and our nominee for vice president. This is our country's story, breaking down barriers and expanding the circle of possibility. And to the young people watching, don't give up on America. Despite our flaws and problems, we've come so far. We can still be a more just, equal country with opportunities previous generations could never have imagined. There's a lot of heartbreak in America now. And the truth is, many things were broken before the pandemic. But as the saying goes, the world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places. That's Joe Biden. He knows how to keep going, unify, and lead, because he's done that for his family and country. So come November, if we're strong together, we'll heal together. We'll redeem the soul and the promise of our country, led by President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Guys, I have interesting commentary on this. I'm going to preview it that way for you guys. In the beginning of it, I thought, and this is verboten, you're not supposed to say this in this kind of coverage, but it sounded like she was still angry about the last election. Like, she just can't let it go. No, I want to be super clear. I would never let it go, so I'm not blaming her. Okay, but it just like that I would never not be in pain over it if I was her. So I understand it, etc. But it sounded like, what are we doing here? Why go back to this? But something weird happened. A turn happened, and I don't know if Michael felt it or any of you felt it. But the second half of the speech I kind of loved. It's when she was talking about the things that Democrats will do. It's funny, we were just talking about the minimum viable product. At least you'll get this, and she listed a lot of them. And then I wrote down, oh right, paid family leave. We could get that too, right? And that's a big deal. It's way different than the Republicans who are like, oh, you just had a kid? Back to the mines, right? And so, in her passionate plea for folks to vote, yes, that's the right person to give that plea. And yes, she's right about that. And then by the end of it, and maybe this is all in my head, but by the end of it, I thought like, you know what, now that she's got nothing left to lose, I kind of like her more. I just felt a little bit more honesty from her, whether it's her anger or her passion, etc. That's what I got out of that. Michael, did I read way too much into that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think reading into what your takeaways were would be going too far, but your takeaways were exactly mine. And you're right. She has a right to still sting over what happened to her and how that loss happened, even if she was to blame for it, right? It still was surprising and upsetting, and people who have lost by much more who weren't expected to win are stung by that for the rest of their day. So it's a tough thing to lose, and it's a tougher thing to lose to this guy. But yeah, she did outline exactly why people should vote, why people should be active, and who better to say those things, right, than the person who had it slip through her hands because of whatever, probably her fault to a degree and others' faults to greater degrees. I don't know, doesn't matter. But I thought she gave a great speech, and honest and relaxed. I think that was it too, Cenk, is what you were talking about.
Relaxed. Yep.
Very relaxed.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.